Giving Up Merit and Sin, December 8th, 2018. The meaning of yoga. What is the meaning of the word yoga? Based on the root verb yuj, yoga simply means union, association, or attainment. For instance, dhana means wealth, and so dhana yoga means the attainment of wealth. Similarly, putra means a child, and so putra yoga means the attainment of a child. Hence, the item which is to be attained through effort must be mentioned before the word yoga as a prefix, and the word yoga must be defined in that context. Today it has become a fashion to use the word yoga independently. In nivritti also, yoga is used with the appropriate prefixes like buddhi yoga or jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, karma yoga, etc. The phrase yogaya yujjasva appears in the verse being discussed. It literally means unite with yoga or unite with union, since yoga itself means union. This appears to be meaningless since there is a repetition of the idea of union. So to clarify the meaning, the word yoga is immediately defined in the subsequent line. It is said, yoga karmasu kaushalam, which means yoga is the talent in actions. This meaning of the word yoga is limited to this verse alone and should not be extended to any other context. Here, since the word yoga is used without any prefix, its definition has been provided. Similarly, the word yoga without any prefix is also used 2 verses earlier in the Gita as yogasthak kuru karmani. It means that one should do actions by situating oneself in yoga, becoming free of attachment, and being equal towards profit or loss. In this context, yoga is defined as equality by the line samatvam yoga uchyate. Hence, whenever a prefix is absent, the word yoga is defined in that context, and such a definition should not be extended everywhere. Wherever the prefix is used, the meaning is clear and no separate definition for the word yoga is needed there. Treating misery and happiness in an equal manner is said to be yoga according to the statement samatvam yoga uchyate. A practical example of the same is the fact that we enjoy hot dishes and sweet dishes in a meal equally. It does not mean that sweet and hot dishes are one and the same. When you eat a sweet dish, cool tears of happiness appear, and when you eat a hot dish, hot tears of misery appear. So the symptoms of enjoying the two also differ. But the end result, which is the joy, that is equal in both. In this example, souls are able to enjoy both sweet and hot dishes in their meals. They derive equal joy or enjoyment after finishing their meals, which consist of both types of dishes. But human souls cannot similarly enjoy both misery and happiness in their lives in the real world. They can enjoy comedy and tragedy equally only in a movie. The reason is that the world is real to the soul. God can enjoy both misery and happiness in this world equally, since the world is unreal for God like a movie. For the soul, the movie is unreal, but the world is real. So it cannot enjoy comedy and tragedy equally in the real world. The soul is different from God in not having the powers of creation, maintenance, and destruction of this world. Even in the enjoyment of tragedy and comedy equally in the world, the soul is different from God. Hence, a monism between God and the soul is impossible from any angle, which is the view of Madhva. Monism is possible for a particular human being if God wishes to become that human being due to his omnipotence. Monism in terms of the equal enjoyment of happiness and misery also cannot be achieved by the soul through its own effort. Only the grace of God can bring such monism, Ishwar Anugrahad eva. If God wishes, the soul can become God when God merges with that soul, resulting in complete monism. Hence, such yoga in the sense of equality is in the hands of God alone. The equality in enjoyment is related to one's subjective experience, which is only in the theoretical or the mental phase. There is no equality in the physical world. Hence, tragedy and comedy or their symptoms are never equal. This equality in the theoretical phase is related to thought or knowledge. Hence, the 4 verses prominently recommend adopting Buddhi Yoga, which is the yoga of intelligence. In other words, the verses recommend analysis. Mere physical actions are said to be inert and pitiable, krupanaha, since they only follow a person's thought or decision, durena yavaram karma. The decision, in turn, is the result of the analysis done using one's intelligence. Equality or yoga in the enjoyment of both happiness and misery is possible to the fullest extent only for God. But the soul can try to achieve it, at least to a certain extent, by detaching one's mind from the fruit of the action. Sangam tyaktva phalanicha. Since this yoga is very useful in the service of God, God will bless the devotee who is trying to achieve such equality of enjoyment in this real world. The soul is attached to the fruit due to its inherent limited selfishness. So even upon taking the best effort for attaining this yoga of equality, the soul cannot attain the state of equal enjoyment permanently. For attaining the state of equal enjoyment in both tragedy and comedy in the real world, God's grace is highly essential. In the case of a person doing social service, there is some detachment from the fruit while doing the work, since the social service is basically done for the benefit of others. But full-time social work is not possible, and some selfish work is inevitable, at least for the sake of one's livelihood. If the word yoga is used without any prefix or definition, it must be taken to be the attainment of the grace of God, since His grace is necessary from the most basic level in pravritti all the way up to nivritti. If you want the word yoga to be used in the sense of the attainment of God Himself, then it can only mean the attainment of the relevant incarnation of God. In this sense, yoga or the union with God means recognizing the contemporary human incarnation of God through knowledge, developing aspiration-free devotion for Him, and remaining associated with Him through practical service and sacrifice. Giving up the superficial classification of merit and sin. In the verse Buddhi Yukto Jahatiha, yoga is defined as the talent in action. This talent too belongs only to knowledge and not to inert actions. Analysis shows us the good and bad sides of the so-called good deeds and the so-called bad deeds. Any given action should be performed only after recognizing its good and bad sides. The bad side should be rejected and the good side should be adopted. Avoiding this analysis, one should not think that a so-called bad quality is totally bad and a so-called good quality is totally good. Such wrong thinking will lead to an altogether rejection of the so-called bad and an indiscriminate adoption of the so-called good. By such blind performance of action, the soul incurs sin. By proper analysis, one can skillfully avoid sin. Thus, the complete and correct meaning of the verse is as follows. The person established in intelligent analysis gives up the blind acceptance or rejection of the so-called good and the so-called bad. This indeed is the talent in action or yoga. Hence, O Arjuna, adopt this yoga. The first 3 verses, Yogastak Kuru Karmani, Durena Yavaram Karma, and Buddhi Yukto, describe action. The implied action here is the service to God, which is called as Karma Sannyasa. The 4th verse, Karmajam Buddhi Yuktahi Phalam Tyaktva, describes the sacrifice of the fruit of one's work to God, which is offering one's hard-earned money to the contemporary human incarnation of God. Karma Sannyasa and Karma Phalatyaga, which are service and sacrifice done for the contemporary human incarnation, together constitute Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is also called as practical devotion, since it is the practical expression and proof of the devotion in the mind. Thus, the 4 verses together describe Karma Yoga or practical devotion to the human incarnation of God. Through sharp analysis, using one's intelligence, Buddhi Yukto, one recognizes the actual meritorious and sinful sides of both the so-called meritorious action and the so-called sinful action. He then skillfully avoids the actual sinful action and does only the actual meritorious action. Such an analytical person discards the general superficial classification of merit and sin, since he depends on actually determining what is meritorious and what is sinful through sharp analysis. For example, a person without analysis might reject anger totally in all contexts and not even use anger where it is necessary. Such a person fails to adopt the good side of a bad quality. Another person may worship God for the sake of some selfish fruit. Such a person has adopted the bad side of a good deed. He has failed to adopt the good side of the good deed, which is worshipping God out of real love without aspiring for any selfish fruit. Both cases show a lack of analysis. By analysis alone can one identify both the good and bad sides of each quality, which might have been considered to be either a good or a bad quality due to ignorant classification. Thus, Buddhi Yoga means leaving this superficial classification of merit and sin and instead actually identifying the inner good and bad sides of both merit and sin. This requires analysis using sharp intelligence. Upon analysis, the person leaves the bad sides of the so-called merit and sin and adopts the good sides of both. It is this leaving of the bad sides of both merit and sin upon analysis that is implied in the verse Buddhi yukto jahatiha ubhe sukruta dushkrute. The talent or skill in action referred to in the line Yoga karmasu kaushalam lies in the identification of the actual merit and actual sin, and in doing only the actually meritorious action. The necessity of killing Bhishma and Drona. The entire Gita was taught in the context of motivating Arjuna to fight with his grandfather Bhishma and his teacher Drona. The two were the most respectable personalities in the life of Arjuna, and killing them was unthinkable for him. That's why he says in the Gita, Katham Bhishma Maham Sankhye Dronancha Madhusudana. Arjuna had assumed that the killing of respectable elders was a sin based on a superficial, ignorant classification. Superficially, killing is a sin. But in reality, the so-called sinful action has both good and bad sides. It is good not to kill any good person, and especially good and respectable elders. But it is bad not to kill one's elders, even if they are bad. Bhishma and Drona did not control the wicked Kauravas when they were insulting Draupadi in the royal court by attempting to take off her clothes before everyone. This is an extreme sin. Both these personalities were very powerful and were fully capable of controlling this climax sin. Yet they kept silent, and their silence meant their approval of the sin, which made them both come under the category of the supporters of the sin, Anumodakas. This sharp analysis of the situation forces us to give up the superficial classification of merit and sin. It reveals the good and bad sides of both merit and sin. It reveals that it was necessary for both the sinners to be punished. This is the heart of Krishna in the context of these verses. Giving Up Merit and Sin, December 8, 2018. Part 2.